Hi, welcome to Endres Manufacturing. We're a structural steel fabricator here in Waunakee, Wisconsin. We've been in business about 86 years. We're proud to welcome Eric Hovde here today, candidate for U.S. Senate. He's going to explain his economic agenda today. Take it away. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure. Well, our country is struggling. Right now, our economy's struggling to grow at even 2%, which is about half the rate that an economy will grow at, the U.S. economy will grow at, post-recession. With an 8.2% unemployment rate, but when you factor in those that have given up looking for jobs, for part-time labor that wants a full-time job, our real unemployment rate is 14.8%. We need to get our economy moving again, and I'm here to lay out my economic plan to get our economy going. It's an 8-point plan. Let me start. Number one, we have to address our skyrocketing budget deficits. Right now today, the U.S. has over $16 trillion in debt. That's more than 100% than our economy. We're going to add another 6.5% debt to our economy this year alone. We're borrowing 38 cents on every dollar we spend. It's unsustainable. Think of it. If a businessman is looking at making an investment in a new factory or a new building, do they want to do that if they're not going to get that money back over the next 5-10 years, if they think the federal government is going to fail like Spain or Greece? No. So we have to bring fiscal sanity back. My view is a 2-point process to that. One, we got to take a top-down approach and pull back the excessive spending that had been created under President Obama, which has been an additional $1 trillion. What has that $1 trillion in additional spending given us? An unemployment rate that's gone up and an economy that's stagnant. Secondly, we got to take a bottoms-up approach and ask some basic questions of the 1,300 different federal agencies that comprise the federal government. One, is the mission still relevant? Two, are there other agencies fulfilling this task, such as there are 47 different agencies of the federal government that are involved in job training. Why do we need 47 different agencies of the federal government fulfilling the same task? And lastly, are those agencies doing a cost-effective job? Well, we know with GSA and with a lot of departments of government, they're spending money wildly. So we have to rein in our budget spending. Second point to my 8-point plan is we need to reform America's broken tax code. Most Americans don't understand tax policy, nor do they understand how to even fill out their own taxes. Today, our country, Americans spend anywhere from $160 to $300 billion a year in having their taxes prepared for them. Why can't most tax forms be filled out on a postcard, or certainly on 1 or 2 pages? We have the highest corporate tax rate in the world at 35%. Higher than any European country, higher than any Latin American country, higher than any place in Asia. Even communist China has a corporate tax rate of 25%. We further have to eliminate all the corporate welfare. Why should giant businesses that buy off career politicians be able to be taxed at a fraction of what a business like we're standing at today is taxed at? It's fundamentally wrong. It creates an economic disincentive and an unlevel playing field where small businesses are taxed at 35% and some giant businesses are taxed at 10% or even less. We need to get rid of the corporate loopholes and reduce the tax rate to create a fair and simpler tax system. Third, we need to do what Ronald Reagan did when he first took office: deregulate our economy. It is estimated that regulations by our federal government cost our economy $1.5 trillion. That is such a staggering amount of money, it's hard to even get your mind around. We have over 81,000 pages of federal regulations. Now think of how many regulations are on each page. How do businesses operate today in a world where they are just being choked by regulations? Gallup recently did a poll asking small business, what is your greatest impediment to adding jobs? Regulations came in at number one. 46% of small businesses said they're not adding new employees because of excessive regulations. Bullet point 4, reform the Federal Reserve. I believe that we should audit the Federal Reserve. I believe that we should get rid of the dual mandate. I believe that it's time to take a hard look at the Federal Reserve's policies of quantitative easing, where they bought 61% of all Treasury debt last year, which is devaluing our dollar and driving up the price of gas, driving up the price of fuel, driving up the price of food, driving up the price of all our base metals. That is why gold has gone from $400 a cubic ounce to $16.50. So I think we need to address the Federal Reserve. Point 5 of the plan, reform the financial services industry. I don't believe the direction that Dodd-Frank went is the right direction. It embedded to the too big to fail banks. It called them systematically important. In my view, if you're too big to fail and you're going to require a taxpayer bailout, then you're too big to exist. They should either be broken up or forced with so much capital that they decide to shrink themselves. 6, repeal Obamacare. The highest rate of inflation of any sector in our economy over the last 30 years has been healthcare. The second has been higher education. What are the similarities between those two? Massive government involvement. I don't believe we should be going in the direction of centralizing healthcare, which will soon be our biggest sector in our economy, up to Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. doesn't do a very good job of managing almost anything. Why do we think that they're going to do a good job managing what will soon become the largest sector of our economy? It will also bankrupt our economy. So I believe we need to replace and repeal Obamacare and move in a totally different direction. For those people that are struggling economically, I believe in premium support payments to help them make their own choices on insurance or buying their health care needs directly. But we need to put consumers back in power of their health care choices. 7, for 40 years, career politicians have been talking about energy independence. And yet last year, we sent $392 billion out of Americans' pocketbooks to the Middle East and other places around the globe because of the importation of oil. We have 6 times the amount of oil shale that Saudi Arabia has. But more importantly, we are the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. We have 272 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. We could power our entire economy for 100 years on our natural gas resources. It's insanity that we are an importer of energy from around the globe. We should be an exporter of energy. It would be one of the biggest things to revitalize our economy. North Dakota, which is using the fracking process to extract natural gas, has the lowest unemployment rate in our country today at 3%, where our national unemployment rate is at 8.2%. So I believe that we should free up the ability for people to drill on private lands, and we should also start using public lands for drilling to get our economy moving. Lastly, my 8th point is it's time to end cronyism. Crony capitalism is distorting our free market economy, and it is distorting our democracy itself. What is that? Where special interests have the ability to buy off the American tax system, or get direct earmarks, or appropriations, or twist our regulations to their benefit to create an unfair playing field against their competitors, or through loan guarantees And let's take a look at that one right there. President Obama, one of his largest campaign contributors in 2008, was a gentleman by the name of Mr. Kaiser. After President Obama got elected, President Obama signed off on a $500 million loan guarantee to a company called Solyndra. In 2.5 years, the company went bankrupt. Thousands of employees lost their jobs. And what happened? The American taxpayers lost $500 million. President Obama still has that campaign check. That is unfair. It's picking winners and losers by the federal government by who can give politicians the most amount of money. It's time we get rid of cronyism. Cronyism is a byproduct of government becoming too big and too large. That is something that has always existed in Europe, and we need to get rid of it. We need to rip it out because it's distorting our free market system. So those are my 8 points to my economic policy for economic recovery. And I believe if we can enact these points, I believe we can get the U.S. economy growing strongly again and make us the economic engine for the globe. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure being here today.
And then we'll do a couple questions.
Sure.
Questions?
Pretty broad. I guess I wonder if there's, we need to get the microphone here.
Sure.
I can swing over there
Let's
for
say
you
if you want, we
too.
can go right to the podium.
Podium's
first.
fine with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Color
Watch
gear's
out.
there anyway. So.
Let you guys move up a bit.
So, did you have any specific reforms in mind for the IRS or the?
As it
Yeah,
pertains
tax
to my
code?
tax policy? Yes. One, I think we should take the corporate tax rate from 35% down to 25%. I think we should get rid of all corporate welfare. Right now, it's costing the U.S. Treasury about $151 billion a year. Again, by doing that, you level the playing field, because right now, if you look at it, small businesses are being taxed at 35%, and S&P 500 companies are being taxed at about 16, 17%. It just came out that Apple Computer was being taxed at 9%. So if we get rid of all the corporate welfare and we lower the rate, then small and medium-sized businesses, which have always been the job creators of our economy, are operating on a level playing field. Also, you simplify the system. On the personal level, we have 6 different benchmark rates on taxation. I think we should shrink it down to 2. My view is that we should have a 10% bracket and a 25% bracket. There's no reason to have 6 brackets. I think we should simplify the tax form. Again, most of these gentlemen here should be able to fill out their tax form on 1 or 2 pages at the most, or in many cases, right on a postcard. It should also largely be required to be filed electronically, or in most cases electronically. We have 92,000 people in the Department of the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. It's absurd. So I think our whole tax system needs to be reformed.